Hello and welcome to the Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today the question is a general question and it's personal to me. So I'm not going to go over the questioner's data because it's really about me and about Chuck. And I had another question or a couple questions coming from the Facebook page I thought I would combine because they're related, more questions about Chuck. So the question is, does Chuck acknowledge or remember what he did as a midlife crisis husband? Does he feel remorse? And how does he feel about me teaching others MLC topics? And then at the Facebook page, it's, does he ever exhibit midlife crisis habits every now and again? And has he ever given his take on everything that happened? And do I still see or hear about the alienator? So first, let's go to the alienator. No. The woman has been out of the picture since 2008. The last time that I know of that he contacted her was a few weeks after leaving her, and it was either while he was staying at our friend's house before I moved to take care of my grandma, or it was a few weeks after that when I was already at my grandma's. And I found out a few years later that I think he called her unless she called him. And I went and asked him. I asked him a question because somebody like this had asked me something about them. And I just asked him, and that's when he said, oh, yeah, I called her at this time. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. But it was so long, it just didn't matter. But that was the biggest closure he had, was because she answered the phone and said, have you left your wife yet? Or something like that. And he said, his feeling that he gave me was, why would I have done that? No. And he said that was the closure because she was always going to do that. And so I don't know if she called him. It sounds more like he called her. He tended to do that to check on because he felt bad for having hurt people. And that's fine. It was enough years after. But that was how he got his closure. Haven't heard from her since then. And really, I didn't ever hear much from her. It was all about the energy getting from her. I looked her up actually not even a year ago. I just checked her on Facebook to see, okay, she's still out there. Yes, lovely, she gained weight. But really no need. I just was trying to follow up and see the arc of an alienator, see if there was anything more, or had she been in other relationships. And really just to check, see what's going on. But no. And we moved away. We didn't move out of state. We moved across the mountains. We lived probably 12 miles, 20 minutes from her before, and she worked in town. And now we live about 3 hours away. And it was a few years before we moved. So she was just gone. He was finally able to keep that gone. So does he ever exhibit midlife crisis habits? Not in an MLC way, no. There might be MLC things that are part of each person's life. Like sometimes he can be more narcissistic, but we all can. Chuck has an anxiety disorder. He had it before. And it is probably a lot of the root that brought him to a midlife crisis. And so instead of thinking midlife crisis habits, what I deal with on a daily basis is a severe anxiety disorder. And what that means is you don't pick your battles. It's all a battle. And I don't mean he argues with me, but everything is spilled milk and you cry over it all. Everything is a catastrophe. He isn't able to filter out this isn't a big deal versus this is a big deal. And so it's a cascade of anxiety. And that's what we deal with. And it causes a lot of stress for him because he's higher stress. And he's had some sort of a mystery medical condition since COVID, I would say September of COVID, that every few days he thinks he's solved it and looked it up, but it's just ongoing. And one doctor told him, well, it's just stress, and was very dismissive. And I said, well, yes, it's stress, but the stress leads to real problems. And so there are a lot of challenges that are created by anxiety, and midlife crisis fit right into that. So that's what I deal with rather than the specific midlife crisis habits. I don't see leaving habits. I don't see projected blame. I don't see betrayal and infidelity, that sort of thing. What I do is recognize that he's capable of it. We all are. And you might logically know, if you've studied biology, that we are all capable of this, but you also, well, my spouse would never, well, he's done it. So I always know that it's always Whether it's a probability, it's always a possibility, right? So I don't live in the same rose-colored glasses world I lived in prior to midlife crisis. So let me move back to the original question. Does he acknowledge or remember what he did as a midlife crisis husband? Yes, but he doesn't need to anymore. Bomb drop was, we're in 2023, 18 years ago. So bomb drop was 18 years ago, and he came home in October of 2008. So almost 15 years ago. It's not a topic of discussion anymore where I have to continue. That for a few years, I would bring it up in snarky arguments, and that stopped for the most part. I mean, maybe once every few years now, if I'm just really upset, well, yeah, I'm the one who, or you're the one who, and usually it's I'm the one who stayed. But yeah, it's kind of a moot point now because it's not just in the past, but it's the more distant past. Did he acknowledge it then? Yeah. Did he remember it then? There are things he doesn't remember, but he remembers betrayal. He remembers that he left. The big picture items. Here's the things, because I've talked about memory. Here's the things he doesn't remember. We got a hot tub. Bomb drop was 2005, March, and he moved out. Remember, he moved back in multiple times, but he moved out for the first time in May, first weekend of May. So that's our year. He put his back out. The first weekend he was physical with her, karma, but we both have had chronic back problems before and after that. And eventually he got a settlement, and we bought a hot tub with that settlement, and the hot tub was delivered the next year. And it was April, May of 2005. And he remembers ordering the hot tub. He remembers being ready for it. He made a cement pad for it, and then he was going to wait for the neighbors in the back to come home. And they always came home in a big carpool. A bunch of men drove home. They shared the back alley with us. And then he was going to ask him, hey guys, can you help me load this hot to just carry it in? About 10 people. And he remembers that very specifically. And this is what he told me. And this is what he told me only 3 or 4 years later, at the end or after his midlife crisis, but very close to after if it was after. I don't remember when we got the hot tub, but he remembered getting it. He remembered making the pad. He remembered the event. He just couldn't place it chronologically. He said a similar thing about his first year or summer working at Costco, which happened to be that summer of the hot tub. He got the job at Costco after bomb drop. And it was October. So then the next summer he's working at Costco, and he says he knows he worked there because he has the check stubs to prove it. So he wasn't ever questioning that. But he says, but I don't remember it. I don't remember the time. But he could still remember events. He just couldn't place thing in time. So you're asking does he remember what he did? Yeah. He remembers events. He just had trouble placing them. And we don't talk about it. How does he feel about me teaching others? It's never been a secret. I used to worry about it. I worried about it because I was like, this is a calling for me. I felt like I can't not do it, and I was very worried that was going to cause conflict. And he just said he was really proud, but he doesn't get involved. It's not something he needs to be reminded of. He doesn't want to be reminded, and I don't blame him, of his sins. He hasn't forgotten them. I think about what I do. He's not going to forget them. But near the end of his crisis, also, he was talking like, I want to tell people what a mistake they're making when he sees them going down the same road. So he wasn't hiding it. It was never a secret. He first was one of those who made leaving me public. He made his affair public. Everything was public. So coming home to me wasn't private. And everyone knew what he had done. He crowed it to the world. Now we don't talk about it. We didn't talk about it with the neighbors when we moved, but I've told them what I do, and then they look and ask, oh. And when we were becoming foster parents, they had to look up the history. We had to discuss it, and one of the people said, oh yeah, we looked that up, so we already know that history. because we've looked up your Facebook and all of those things. So it's not a secret. And he felt that he had made such a mistake that he wanted others to learn about that mistake and not make that mistake. So I think that may be where he comes in with being accepting of what I'm doing. He just isn't a part of it. Part of it is because he's not somebody who writes about things. He's not somebody who wants to go online, and it's not his passion. And I don't think he'd want to be reminded of it anyway, where I know that some go through the betrayal and they come and become a team with their spouse or on their own, such as Marriage Helpers. Joe Beam was the leaving spouse, and he's the head of Marriage Helpers, rather than I'm in the place of Joe Beam's wife, the one that's leading it. And Chuck it's not what he wants to do. And I don't think he wants to be reminded of it, and he doesn't want to go and study it. And not because of I feel bad about what I did, but it's just not his interest. His interest is in barbecue groups, and he joins them, and they are his best friends. Just like you guys are often each other's best friends out there on our support groups. So he has his things, and I have my things, and it works out. So I hope this helps to clarify things, and I will see everybody in the next